President Trump is a disruptor, which causes a lot of uncertainty and chaos. And I think businesses in these kind of circumstances are cautious.
This is Branded, where we break down the week's biggest stories in business, marketing, and branding. I'm Tom Kane, I bring the headlines. Ben Kaplan brings the insight, and together we figure out what it all really means. No fluff, no jargon, mostly smart takes, and sometimes sharp questions. All right, let's move on to the headlines. So, protests in LA escalate as curfew and troops deployed. Musk and Trump end bromance in bitter dispute. Mondelez sues Aldi over copycat Oreos. Warner Brother Discovery to spin off streaming and cable networks. Major global layoffs continue. And Alibaba launches Pick Copilot for fashion brands.
And I actually have a question for you, Tom, before we go into that, which is like this sort of like LA protests escalated, armed forces sent in by the federal government, which is a sort of like huge escalation in what it was, which causes many problems in its own right. Like, was that covered in the UK? Is it a story where people following it? Like, it is a big story here in the US.
I'm sort of all over social, so I generally see a lot. I've heard quite a lot about it, but no, it's not one of the sort of major stories right now in the UK. The latest thing, that I read about, even today was like a drone strike in Ukraine from Russia. But I mean, it's certainly about, but I wouldn't say it's a main story. We have a bunch of other things sort of happening over here.
Trump is really skilled at this, at what he brands the Democrats. He is so able to change the conversation and reinforce the brand that the Democrats don't want to be, or they shouldn't be, because we've already seen this story play out of where this brand leads. And what I mean by that is like the Democrat brand, when Trump does this, becomes like, oh, you're the person, it's like the image of the person standing on, the protester standing on a burning car with a mask on their face, holding a flag that isn't the US flag up there. And like, as sensible people do who want to protect the rights of people and say we shouldn't send all of these military forces into a city for what was essentially a peaceful protest that we escalated into something else, come to the defense of this. But it reinforces, every other Democrat, including the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, has to come out and sort of say like, we're against this. But it positions it back into like, this is a threat against democracy. This is an abuse of power. This is an overreaction. This is, democracy is at risk. But the issue is that whole branding, that argument, we've already seen played out. I mean, that was the 2024 election, right? Like, sure. First Biden and then Kamala Harris ran on democracy is at risk. Trump is a threat to democracy. We can't allow this to happen. We see how that turns out. And the reason, I think, from a brand, it comes back to brand again, where it doesn't really work and stick as well on Trump, is that his brand is some of these things, which are very chaotic, but it's also his day-to-day is, and accounting of it, he seems like an affable guy somewhat. He seems like he comes in the room and, he wouldn't be a bad guy to have a beer with. And there's other elements to him that is not all just like he is a dictator out to remove all democracy as we know it. So his brand is more complicated. So with these arguments, I mean, where the Democrat brand needs to get to is that like, hey, many of these things that people like Americans agree we need, like is like, let's reduce government waste. Let's be a little bit tougher on immigration and rules and all of that. Americans kind of agree on. They just don't like the way Trump's doing it. Democrats actually have a huge opportunity, we think, to be like, you know what? You said you're for you. We're for you, meaning we care about prices rising. We care about chaos in your retirement accounts that is self-inflicted. We care about your quality of life in your job. Like, that's where the Democrat brand should be.
A lot of people have spoken out about this. Obviously, Gavin Newsom needs to, because he's the governor, and Mayor Bass also has slammed the intervention as unlawful. But other people have spoken up. Kim Kardashian, sort of these influential types, Jimmy Kimmel and stuff, have spoken up about it. All of them are sort of saying the same thing. It's disgusting. It's inhuman. What is it a time for brands should they stay silent? Should they speak out? Do they need to step up?
A decade or so ago, it was like brands don't get involved in politics, right? They sort of stay out of the fray. There's been much more of a sense of brands entering this and being involved, I'd say, in the past 5 years. And I still think it's problematic, and you have to understand the brand that you have, right? We're going to discuss Oreo cookies in a second, right? Should Oreo cookies be entering the fray on this? Like, probably not. There are some brands where it does make sense, where, we'll set aside the fact that Ben and Jerry's is owned by a corporate, big corporate brand that may not want to play, but like Ben and Jerry's is a active brand where it does sort of make sense. So you have to understand what your brand is. It's not a one size fits all.
Well, staying on Trump, our second headline, Musk and Trump end bromance in bitter dispute. I've seen a bunch of different headlines about that today. Musk denounced Trump's one big beautiful bill as a disgusting abomination. Trump retaliated, threatening to cut $34 to $48 billion in federal contracts for Tesla, SpaceX, and Starlink. Tesla's stock plunged 14 to 15%. I can attest that. I'm a Tesla investor, so I can attest to how annoyed that made me.
Okay, I'm sorry. You were just watching this prize. Were you like refreshing your page? I was author in a prior life, so usually like you refresh your Amazon sales ranking, but you were just refreshing the stock, just crying.
Yeah, basically biting my fist, saying, "Please stop, please stop tweeting."
I'm sorry, but the only thing I'll say is like it can reverse just as fast for Tesla. So I'm not crying. I'm not too sad for you yet, Tom. But
it's already sort of on its way back up. So that's as of today. Then Musk threatened to pull SpaceX spacecraft from the ISS missions. There are loads of stuff has happened. What's your take on this Musk Trump situation? I know we spoke a little bit about it last week.
It is just the volatile collision that, unfortunately, Elon Musk, there's a lot of things he is, right? Like the richest man in the world. He's probably the most successful technologist in the world. There's all of this, but there's one thing he's not. He is not the president of the United States.
True.
That he has absolutely, and Elon Musk has absolute power in Tesla pretty much. He has it in SpaceX. He has it in XAI, but he doesn't have the kind of institutional governmental power that Trump does. So he's going to lose this. What I think is interesting from a brand perspective, though, is just that Elon Musk, I haven't seen, we've talked about this a little bit, but like such a fluctuation in like what his brand is, what it represents. And, he and Trump, like it went like, can you even think of, Tom, like an example of like two people who are known for being like bros, best friends, working together, so much so that like Trump, like Elon Musk is allowed to like be in the Oval Office with like his kids on his shoulders and like rules don't apply to him.
Yeah.
And he does that, just like devolving that fast so publicly. Can you even think of an example like that?
No, I really cannot. And for this episode, I was looking into other sort of notable CEOs. The Tim Cook, I know we spoke about that recently, much more understated. Jeff Bezos, obviously recently, well, he stepped down as CEO, but didn't have that kind of, even Bob Iger for Disney or Zuckerberg. They've all, no.
And the problem is it's like such a loss in value for companies and everything else. We've talked about that, but it is just, I think he's even, kind of walking that back. He's realizing like, this is like not the smart thing. He has sort of paid a huge price for this, both in terms of Doge, I should say, and being the kind of the face of that, which created a lot of animosity. But then on top of that, some of the benefit, one could argue that you do all of this stuff. You do it in politics. If you're like the leader of these companies, you're the richest man in the world. You do all this stuff because it gives you a clear business advantage to be in well with the US government and the US president. They are your biggest customer. They basically control all of the rules that affect what you can do as a business and a growth. And some could be said, like, you would do all of this stuff that is controversial. You could justify it because, in the end, it creates a business playing field that is undeniably tilted towards you, which is hugely valuable for your business. The problem is you make that argument, you do that entire speech I just did. And then you're like, you throw all of that away because your ego gets in the way and you can't just, and you kind of throw away all of your influence because he didn't have to do this on Twitter, right? He could have done this behind the scenes in the back. We need to change this. Yep. I mean, the fact that he's, Trump needs him too. Like that didn't escape him. I mean, he kept bringing that up, right? Like you would not have won if you didn't have all my money. Like I'm funding a lot, but yet it was just kind of all thrown away. And what the only thing that does is I'm going to wear your hat for a second, Tom, because you're a Tesla investor, is that it makes you worried about his judgment. It makes you worried that he is like a vision. I mean, because before he says like, yeah, he's eccentric. He's probably a little bit crazy, but man, does he grow businesses. And so that's okay. But in this case, this was like a very bad business decision.
If you're on the Tesla board right now, do you start like building brand separation, or do you like double down on what he's saying?
I think you can't totally separate because there's so much value that he creates. But I think if you're on the Tesla board, you have a contingency plan for a lot of things, I think right now. I mean, I think they would be wise to have contingency plan for, really plummeting. What happens if something happens to Elon Musk? There's an accident, there's something else. What do? There's contingency plans for what if it is something that is just like really like almost like a Kanye West type thing that's unpredictable that happens. Happens if, it doesn't seem like the US government is going to carry out its threat to just like remove all contracts. It seems like that was just an escalation that if he walks it back, they won't. But what if something happens? What do? I think you have like a million contingency plans right now.
Let's move on to Mondelez. Let's talk about Oreos.
Let's talk about Oreos. Oreos are happy, right? But yet this is not a happy story. This is like, we're going to be litigious about Oreos.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Mondelez filed a federal lawsuit in Illinois claiming Aldi's Benton cookies use packaging that's blatantly similar to Oreo's chips, ahoy, causing consumer confusion. For all the listeners here, we're looking at Benton's cookie, original chocolate sandwich cookies with vanilla filling. It does look incredibly like the Oreo packaging, right?
Like it is probably technically a different shade of blue, but it is like very close to the shade of blue. It's almost just like if you adjusted the light on blue and shine the light from a different angle. It is like, it's a blue package, okay? It doesn't say Oreo on it, but it does say, I'm looking at this, Tom, it says original, which starts with an O, in kind of a similar kind of script. It has huge cookies on it that are cream-filled that basically look like Oreo cookies.
Yeah, if I was judging this, I would be on Oreo's side here for this one.
I mean, they're not identical, but this is definitely like the vibe. It is definitely giving off the vibe, and I sort of like get that this was like too close.
The only thing you're missing here is the milk, right? If they added milk, that would be game over.
Honestly, just showing the cookie and not doing the color probably would have been enough, right? Yeah. Just a slight difference and, some stripes there, so it wasn't that solid color, and they could have showed the cookie. People would have got it. It's probably a bit of a misfire by Aldi.
I mean, it feels like you're going to be siding with Oreo. If you were judging this, you'd be siding with Oreo on this one, right?
Yes, I feel they have a legitimate point. I feel like Aldi probably could just do like a couple little tweaks. And, we've done a ton of our work, right? A ton of like sort of brand modernization tweaks. I think actually it's just the combination of colors and the positioning and all of that is just too close. And they probably could have just altered it and still communicated to people that, like, who are we kidding here? This is like an Oreo cookie knockoff. So they probably could have communicated that as like probably unnecessary and probably, probably good for Oreo to defend, their brand, and probably Aldi should make some tweaks to that package.
Yeah, and look, listen, Aldi, if you are listening, and it's not like this is a giant versus, this is not a David versus Goliath type lawsuit, right? I mean, Aldi have like 12,000 stores worldwide or something. Like it's not a, let's feel sorry for Aldi. But Aldi, if you are listening and you need some help, Ben mentioned before, we've done that kind of stuff before, so get in contact.
Yeah, get in contact. And by the way, I think here's the other thing is like, this is not an isolated incident. I am looking right now, Tom, I don't know if you've seen this. I am looking at Aldi or Benton's, their brand, chocolate chip cookies. That package looks exactly like Chips Ahoy.
Oh, really? Oh, really?
Yes. This is not. So I think this is what maybe provoked this too, is just like multiple instances of confusion and all of that. And so they're probably taking a stand.
Let's head over to the Warner Brothers Discovery to spin off streaming and cable networks. So Warner Brothers Discovery is going to split into two standalone public companies, streaming and studio, which is going to be Warner Brothers, DC Studios, HBO Max/Max. I'm not sure. They always change it. There's been 6 or 7 names now for HBO. It's one of those. Let's see what they decide tomorrow. Global networks going to be CNN, TNT, Discovery Linear Channels, and Bleacher Report. Bob Iger from Disney has said that these cable spin-offs will give Disney a stronger hand in negotiating content deals. Industry investors have reacted positively to this split, and the Warner Brothers Discovery stock jumped after this news was released.
Tom, I would just say it's kind of the normal playbook here, which is just you have like the new, more trending type of business, which is the streaming business. And then you have the fading business, which is the cable business, as people are sort of cutting the cord, so to speak. And, you know, the fading business acts as a parking brake on the business that can move forward, which is the new business. And it's always a drag. And it's a drag on, you know, in particular, the sort of the stock price and how investors look at it. And you don't. And so by splitting it off, you can separate and you can sort of like unlock value. So in many ways, it's like a normal kind of part of the process that you see in businesses. And the only thing I'd sort of say in this space is that I don't think this will be just like one winner in this space. There will be several, but there are, you know, many unsustainable operations in streaming that eventually will catch up. And I think you got to do whatever you can to get ahead. And certainly this sort of clarifies the business. It probably improves it's not like a huge, like the parent company's not like a huge outward facing, you know, brand, but some of their properties are, and it probably over time unlocks that. And so seems like kind of normal type of sort of spin-off work that you see from lots of other entities that have new technology and traditional businesses. And, you know, you just divide them because otherwise you're not a pure play in the new hot business.
Do you think brands will have to pick sides in regards to like streaming versus cable linear companies in regards to how they spend?
I think they already have. I think they already, you know, I think, yes, it's streaming. Streaming has won, cable business on the out. I think there's still a lot of customers. I mean, it doesn't mean there's everyone. There's still businesses to run. There's still money to be made. But yeah, people have already decided.
But Ted Turner did so much hard work to get those cables down, no?
Well, yes, there is that, but like this is, I mean, what I would just say is this is just the evolution of the business, right? So this is like the same, what it was, this is just like the new version of it. So all of those people came before it, they were all contributing. It's just, this is the way things go.
Now, going back to last week's conversation, we talked a lot about AI taking our jobs, right? And there have been major global layoffs worldwide. There's been over 100,000 jobs lost so far in 2025 across tech, finance, media, beauty, logistics, and loads more. Big names that have made a bunch of layoffs. UPS, Intel, CrowdStrike have let go of 500 roles, citing AI as the reason they let people go. Microsoft, Meta, Disney, Estee Lauder, JP Morgan, the list goes on and on. I saw the Google CEO positioning the layoffs as we're sort of adapting to the AI economy, as there won't just be one winner in the AI race. The former WPP CEO David Jones warned that AI-driven cost-cutting could deliver a Kodak moment for traditional agency models. And lastly, Allison and Partner, a PR firm, found that 31% of consumers will view brands differently after layoffs. How do you think well, firstly, do you have any thoughts on the layoffs before I ask you sort of brand specific questions?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think there's a confluence of factors that cause companies to be more conservative. I mean, I think AI gets a lot of headlines, but there's a huge amount of uncertainty about macroeconomic conditions that's a result of sort of like international trade and tariff chaos. President Trump is a disruptor, which causes a lot of uncertainty and chaos. And I think businesses in these kind of circumstances are cautious. And the issue is that when you have uncertain times, what is the alternative? Like, the alternative for businesses is to invest, right? You invest in more capability, you invest in more assets, manufacturing, laboratories, expensive things. And you do that when you have confidence for the future. So if you're not doing that, if you feel like, no, we're not going to spend, if you're one of these big companies, we're not going to spend billions of dollars investing, and you're concerned about where things are, and you're like, you still want to drive up return, like, what's the other thing you can do? You can either invest or you can cut cost. Yeah. And these companies are big, and these companies are usually, much like the federal government, not that nimble. There is probably a lot of expense that could be cost if they really looked. And so when you're trying to drive returns, if you don't have the confidence to spend and invest, you're going to cut cost. I will say, I don't think this is all AI driven. I think this is uncertainty driven. AI is a contributing factor to uncertainty, but it's not the only one right now.
How does a brand recover from letting so many people go?
Well, one, you have to work on like the internal message. So you have to think about what you're communicating to all the people who are left. And two, you sort of have to do the things which are sort of like the anti, like, Doge cuts.
Yeah.
Which are like, this isn't indiscriminate. This is necessary. We do care about the people who are affected. We are taking steps to mitigate this as much as we can. And you have to like do a good job communicating all of that. And then you probably have to have some like other good news. I mean, the other thing you do is you have a bunch of bad news. You just like try to drown it out with good news. So those are all kind of things you do. But I would say, overall, the other reason why you see people jumping on this is like, it gives companies a little bit of cover when other people are doing it, right? You can't be the bad one if 20 other companies you've heard of are doing it too. It sort of gives license to other people to do it, but this is driven by uncertainty, and companies are going to need to make sure that they show that they care about people. And a great example of that actually would be like Duolingo, right? Duolingo, came out and announced like, we're going to cut all of these jobs. We're just going to have AI run it. And there was huge, Duolingo's it has like a fun social brand. They do a lot of quirky stuff with their characters like online, and they just like, unlock the hate from all of that because they weren't cognizant of all of that. And I think most brands just need to like make sure they reinforce that, hey, people do matter.
Side story, just as a small story, as we're, a lot of the topics we're covering, talking about AI. I was just having my dinner with my family, and my 9-year-old daughter was talking to ChatGPT, right? It has a chat function. Now they've added breaths and like more natural speaking. So, mine's got a British accent, obviously. I'd love it to sound like a butler, like the stereotypical, like, like Jeeves or something. But it's sort of got like my kind of accent. But we were asking about planting sweet potatoes, as boring as that sounds. And she was talking to it. And then she turned to me and she said, "Daddy, why does it sound so real?" And I was thinking to myself, this is because it's going, Kyrie, listen, you need to plant your sweet potatoes in the, and breathe. And it's like, it's surreal almost listening to this person speaking, because it sounds like a real person. I was like, in 5 years time, maybe sooner, you won't be able to distinguish between real and not, with a lot of these things. Anyway, side story. The last, the headline we've got here is actually to do with AI, and actually a kind of cool feature, I think. Alibaba launches Pick Copilot for fashion brands. So Alibaba's Pick Copilot fashion reels convert static garment images into polished video try-ons using AI. So you can log on, you can take a picture of yourself, upload a picture of yourself, and it can automatically put on any garments that you want to buy on your body so you can see what it looks like, kind of thing. Kind of a cool feature. What do you think? Would you use that?
Yes, I would absolutely. I think we're going to see so many examples of AI being able to do this. And just like, I'm blown away. Like, I don't know if you've seen this as like a side example, but like, I think at Google DeepMind, they have like a version of like AI inside of AI. Like, AI will create this like video game world and have an AI that doesn't know it, that will navigate it, and they will create it together with each other, like meaning like literally like walk down the stairway, and then on the fly it will create it. So if it can create like an entire world on the fly based on what's happening in real time, mean, I feel like it should be able to, like, Tom, put you in a James Bond tuxedo and like make you see how that looks. And probably if you want, like, let's maybe you don't need this, Tom. I need this, but like pretend I've been working out for a year or something like that, and that fit, or pretend I don't work out at all, and see what it happens. So I think lots of tools like this are coming. I wouldn't be surprised, like, honestly, in like the future version of Tinder or dating things, that you're gonna have like, no, this picture has not been adjusted. I can prove this hasn't been adjusted. Like, I think people will start like demanding these kind of features will be new areas for companies and marketers to like kind of leverage.
I thought you were going to say, try someone on.
Here's what you would look like with this person. Like, let's see, like your new girlfriend, you're on a trip to Disneyland.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Does that sort of feel like, yes. I don't know, but no, it's going to be a strange and interesting time, to bring it back to what your kids are asking. My kids all the time, like, are pointing out self-driving cars like it's nothing. Your kids are pointing out like, oh, it's normal to have a conversation, with with your phone that seems real.
Yeah.
And so it is going to be an interesting thing. And I think we don't even know the impact on kids, the world, all of this. I think from marketers, what I would just say, I know there's a lot of marketers who listen, that I think we can be totally more creative about applications of this that communicate brand pillars, that communicate new products. Like, I think, it's going to open up a world of, I would almost call it like, it's almost a new version of like product-led marketing or product-led advertising, where it's like, it's not even like the product you sell. It's just like products that are made to communicate a point. It is going to be really, really interesting. I think in 5 years, that's going to be in everyone's toolbook, is like, oh, here's how you take your biggest fans and followers and put them in your new world that matches your product and lets them experience that and interact. And we won't be saying it because it's just the world. We're saying, like, we're doing all of this to emphasize a point about the brand and to make more of a connection. I think we're going to be doing that in 5 years.
Do you think there's going to be a resurgence of humanity? Is it going to be like like DVDs, vinyl made their way back for a little while, and I haven't seen cassette tapes come back yet, but DVDs and CDs made their comeback. Do you think in 5 years time, when AI is taken over all creative avenues, there'll be like a resurgence of the human, paintings and music?
I think what there will be is like a resurgence of like human excellence, for sure. Meaning being really, really skilled at what you do, being really skilled in a human way that cannot, like, if you have a skill that cannot be replicated easily by AI, you will be valuable. What that also means is like, it will, really separate out if you're in like that top 1% or 2% or 0.1% of your field, and it is apparent, then you will have incredibly great value because everything else will be commoditized.
All right, that's it for this week's headlines, the brand moves, business shifts, and eyebrow raisers that caught our attention. If you learned something or disagreed violently or just want more of this, hit follow, leave a review, or better yet, drop a comment about the weirdest brand story you saw this week. We might just feature it.